Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the For Real podcast. On the podcast, we talk about what we experienced whilst practicing and teaching Kung Fu and Tai Chi and how it benefits our lives and the three parts that make us whole: the mind, the body, the spirit. With me on the episode, as always, is Sifu Guansu, master and founder of the Jingmo Academy, aka my father. My name is Jung Soo and I'm a senior instructor at the Jingmo Academy. So, on this episode, if you've heard the previous episode, we have again Dai Sihing Rob and Sihing Brian. They are senior members of the Academy, not by their age, but by their involvement and how long they've been training and stuff like that. We continue to talk about what we're experiencing during this COVID-19 time and how our practice has been helping and stories and lots of things that really interest me in this episode. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy this episode of the For Real podcast.
You want to start?
Yeah, I guess we'll draw some context to the listeners if they're listening at a later date. As of the 18th of May 2020, the COVID Perth restrictions have been lifted in terms of gatherings and restaurants and cafes and stuff like that. So in terms of the academy, I think I saw that fitness places and whatnot can have up to 20 people now, with maintaining social distancing, I believe, still, and having no shared equipment just as yet, but you can still, now you can gather at least up to 20 people in a space. So for us, that's training. So that's what we're referring to. And, we've been in kind of isolation this whole time and doing classes online on Zoom and, messaging each other and doing the training remotely sort of thing. So now we're in the stage of kind of going back to the academy space and being in a group class, which is quite exciting, isn't it?
So has it been 6 weeks? Is it 6 weeks we've been in COVID isolation?
Maybe about.
Yeah. Well, I've been at home longer than that, but it was before things started getting a little, prescribed. We were sent home fairly early.
So how long have you been dicing?
That's a good question. It's probably 8 or 9. So it would only be maybe a fortnight behind that, where most would have gone home, I'm sure, something like that.
Sing Brian, and how long have you been working from home?
I was just trying to reflect on it then. I believe it was second week in April, somewhere in that date. So it's probably been about 5 weeks. So yeah, that working on restricted hours and from home.
So I'd like to start with the question of what's the one thing we've learned? Well, what are the things we have learned from being in COVID isolation? And we're doing pretty good. I mean, Perth, Western Australia is doing very well by comparison to the rest of the nation, as well as Australia is doing really well in comparison to the rest of the world, really. Something we're doing really well.
For me, Sifu, just reflecting on it, because as you were talking at the start about things that that you don't want to lose from the experience of, the changes to our lives around COVID and what you would discard. I was sort of thinking, because I haven't really thought about it too deeply, but one thing that has come to mind is that being comfortable with just being, because prior to COVID, life was at so much as a pace, and continued to take on work external to my work, number of other committees and boards, and probably didn't know how to slow down. So this has forced me to review what is really important. And as such, there's a couple of committees that I've stepped out of, because in my list of priorities, there's others that can take on those challenges. There's other focuses for me. So it's, and just to actually be in the house or be around the house and be comfortable with not doing anything at times, just to sort of sit there and enjoy looking at the trees move slowly in the breeze, or the pelicans fly overhead, or something like that. Just something. Before COVID, I would that would actually stress me out. I actually had to be busy. I had to be active. I had to be doing something. So that's something I've really got to be conscious of, and not lose once we move back into normality as it was.
Cool.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, Sam Brian. I'm probably the opposite to that. So I have always treated my home as the place that's not anything else. And so when I am at home, I sit down and I stare out the window. I don't do anything. And like mowing the lawn and that kind of thing, of course, you keep up with stuff, but that's almost on par with washing the leaves, blowing the breeze for me. So that was actually a real challenge for me, coming home with all and bringing all the work with me. That was something that I've actually always avoided. Even back when I was teaching CP, like I would train, and of course we trained a lot at the school, so we didn't have to, but I wouldn't train at home because I had a place to do that. And uni was the same even prior to that. And then when I went back as well, I would always do the work at uni. I would never bring it home. And that was, of course, pre-kids and responsibility as well. So having to do that now and merge those worlds together was actually really difficult for me for the first few weeks. Because I can look out at the trees from here. So it's quite a nice view. And so I did that a little bit to begin with. But in saying that, now I've kind of hit the stride a little bit, and I'm quite comfortable working from here now. And just yesterday we were talking about what our, what the path back to the studio is for my work, and whether or not we actually want to do it or not, because we work from a co-working space because it's a new branch of a bigger company in Perth, and they started out with two guys just over a year ago in Flux in the city in a co-working space, and within a year had expanded up to 8. So we were looking for a new place, and now it's, do we go back? Do we just wait and see and grab a place, a dedicated place, and move straight into that? Like, there's a few questions up in the air now. So, and I'm getting happier just being here. So, not sure if I want to go back now. It's kind of it's kind of convenient actually. So. Yeah, I suppose the lessons learned, it's like merging those two worlds is not as bad as I had made it out to be. And I guess moving forward, it only gets easier now that I know how it works. The hours are different. It's an early start. There's a gap in the middle, then there's a later finish, and it moves around a bit. But now that's kind of sorted out, it's actually quite a nice environment to be in. Being available to people like my family whenever they need it, it's quite good. So those worlds meshing is probably a big thing for me. It's just letting that happen rather than resisting it. That's what I can see so far.
Cool.
I think for me, Daicing was opposite to seeing Brian. I think I was opposite to Daicing, where work and home were a bit of a both thing, two together. And one thing I noticed throughout this, I call it the season, COVID season, is that I was very tired. I didn't realize it because, you just, like seeing Brian describe, you just keep going. There's a pace to life and you just keep going every day. But when everything kind of slowed down because there was no travel to the academy or any other locations for teaching, it was mainly at home, train from home, teach from home. I got a lot more sleep and rest. And then what triggered me that I was tired, and the changes it made to my daily routine and how I felt was when I started seeing people. Now that things are relaxed, I'm seeing more people, cousins, aunties, uncles. Everyone's saying I lost weight. Everyone's like commenting that I've lost weight, and I haven't realized that until people say that. And then now that they say it, I notice, oh, these pants don't fit me as much, or these shirts are a bit too big for me now. And I don't know what it is, but Sifu showed me that we might share the same thing, because obviously my dad says same genes, where when we don't get enough sleep, what do you call it? The chi builds up in our body or something like that, and it doesn't allow the full process. So we gain weight, and it feels like I was bloated. Like I look at photos of me a few weeks ago, my cheeks were like really far out, and like the area around my stomach was, I'm not obese, but it was a bit bigger and stuff like that. So I might go all day about this, but one thing I took away was that I was really tired. And I'm sure, Dusting, my hours aren't as intense as yours back then, probably, but early morning classes and then late at night classes, and eating late and sleeping late and wake up and do it again and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're long days.
Yeah, long days. So that's what I noticed.
Well, that's interesting. We've all got hearing what you've all shared so far. For me, what I've noticed is that I really enjoy being around at home, and specifically being with my wife and kids. I've really missed seeing Sing Sung face to face, because when we're in the previous routine, we were seeing each other, like we're literally with each other 6 days a week. And then COVID happened, and because he lives away from us, I didn't get to see him at all face to face. But then I started being at home all the time with wife and kids, and I started to notice the difference in what was really important to me. And what I noticed was that the relationships I have with my wife and kids became much more real, I think, much more real, less about how do we get through the week and more about, well, how are you going? Because, when we're in that go, and I get that, seeing Brian, that it's like every morning it's up at 5, and 4 days a week classes start at 6 a.m. and then it's afternoon and phone calls and then emails and then evening class and then keep my practice up, and it's just ongoing. And when I get home, it's like I get off running to get into running harder, because you've got a set amount of time to get the children into bed because they've already had dinner. I haven't had dinner, but I get home at the time where they're getting out of the shower, get them into the bath, bed routine, and then trying to settle them when they've missed me all day and all they want to do is share time with me, but now it's time to go to sleep. And there's that battle. Your kids are obviously much older than mine, but there's that routine as well. And I agree, like we're saying, Sung, that sleep, like I've been quite sleep deprived, I think, for quite a long time, but I've gotten used to it. I mean, Dicing, we've always had long days and we start early. And I've taught myself how to operate on very little sleep. But now, having caught up, because there's really only 2 days a week where I'm up to do the Zoom classes that start at 6 a.m. Plus, I don't need to drive anywhere, which means I can sleep in a bit longer. It's like, wow, this sleep thing is really good. And I'm feeling much healthier for it. So definitely one of the things that I've learned is that the previous routine I had kind of just got away from me. and I got busy being busy, I think, and just ended up inheriting a whole lot of stuff I really didn't need, like yourself and committees and things. It's like routines and things that just evolved, and I never really sat back and thought about, well, how does this look in the big picture? Because I didn't have a big picture. It kind of was an evolving canvas. It's just stuff happened and you just kind of deal with it as it went, rather than this is how I want it to look. And I think for me, after hearing the relaxing of that, well, we're at what they called it, level 2, is that right? Level 2?
I think step 3 steps.
Or step 2, 3 steps, or step 2 then.
Yeah,
step 2. So we've got this week to get used to it, and then step 2 is implemented as of next Monday. But it's still, for us, there's still another piece of the pie. It's not just the federal government saying we can go back to being groups of 20, but it's also the premises that we hire also have to be open for us to do that. So we've still got to wait for them. But I'm going to really miss being at home. I'm actually going to really miss taking William for morning walks and helping him to sleep, playing, and having, like, this last few weeks, it's the first time where my Wednesday has absolutely nothing but being with William and Isabella, and she's been back at school now for this is the 3rd week. So prior to her starting school, it was all day Wednesday was just me and Isabella and William. And we'd just do whatever we wanted. Woke up late, had breakfast, go for walks, kick ball, watch Moana over and over and over again. Help him to sleep. She would do some reading, we do some drawing, we just talk about nothing, just be with each other is really nice. And there's part of me that's really going to miss that. And yesterday I could feel really emotional about the announcement, because I now need to make a decision about how am I going to be in the next step. How's it going to be? And, like, 3 of us here are parents, and we know as parents that it's a really hard space being able to know what's best for our kids, and what's best for them might actually be not in agreement to what they want. So that's a really hard space to be in, because if we give them what they want, we're kind of taking away from what we really believe is good for them. But if we don't give them what they want, then they're hurt in some way, shape or form. And, do we say you've got to toughen up, or do we bend a little bit and we've got to compromise and find a medium space, So it's, for me, the next step is exactly like that. It's like, I know what's good for me now. How do I do this? It's going to be really hard. Well, I acknowledge it is hard. It's really hard. Thinking about it now, I'm getting quite emotional about it, because it's like, even leaving today to come here, Monday's now just starting this week proper today. It's pretty much all day here at the studio. And it's like, I'm saying goodbye to William and Simo, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm going to really miss being with them. This is going to be really hard, being away for a whole day. Whereas before COVID, it was like, get me out of the house. When can I be released? I want to go to work, and do my thing. And geez, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough.
Yeah.
So I wonder, how do we do a bit of both? Like, for me, what I'm hearing is that something that you want to keep seeing, Brian, and seeing Sung, is the to be able to be at home, to be just being at home. And Dai Si Hing, you've now found that happy medium. So you're a little bit ahead of the game in that you've already made home just home, and you never took work of any nature home, and only just recently in the last 6 to 8 weeks. So you found a happy medium, and you guys clearly have the capacity to say, well, we'll just work from home until we absolutely need not to. Whereas, you know, I don't have the space to invite 50 people back to my place and do a class. But I used to. Remember when I was living in Elder Street? It's like home was upstairs and training was downstairs.
That's right.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the answer.
I'd probably consult.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's an idea. Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you keep and what would you give away, St. Brian? Well, I guess it's what would you keep from both worlds, ideally?
Oh, yeah, that's tough, Sifu, because I haven't really thought about it too much. You know, one thing, if I look at it, you know, when life returns to businesses, you know, technically 5 days a week for me, but realistically it's 7 days a week because the weekends I still email and phone calls and spend a lot of time thinking about what the next week or the next month looks like. So there's always that activation there. And I mean, you know, what you say is resonating with me with respect to, you know, the time, apart from being home and just being happy being, that's also inclusive of being with the kids. So, you know, Caitlin's at school now, but James and Sophie are homeschooling. So I'm around the house, I'm on the laptop. There's not a ridiculous amount of work coming in at the moment because, you know, there's the entertainment precinct. There's no entertainment at the moment. It's recovery planning. So the normal entertainment that I'm used to is dried up at the moment. But just sort of been able to check email and then, you know, hear the kids' alarm go off to say that it's the end of that class, it's the end of this recess, and be able to just sort of catch up with them and just be with them, which, you know, I'm not used to doing because up at the crack of dawn, and if I do go to training or I do go to the gym before they're awake, when I get back home, it's quickly rushing them to get ready for school, drop them to school, at work, don't see them till 6:30, 7 at night if I'm not training. And then I've only got them for an hour and a half before it's bed, and then the cycle starts. So it's probably something that I don't know if I can answer now, but I will post this conversation, sort of reflect on it and see how I try and do that. I think dropping some of those committees that I was part of is going to help because that was additional work, additional time away where I was thinking about my responsibilities, things that I had to do for those committees. And, you know, one of them was, you know, Perth and Victoria coverage as well. So it's, I'm hoping that is going to just free up a little bit of extra time, even just for my mind, to be able to allow me to connect more with the family when I do have that time with them and make, it's not going to be the same length of time with them, but, you know, I'm going to have to focus on that quality aspect.
Mm. What about you, Daising?
Yeah, it's kind of just further to what I was saying before, I guess. The role, like those time slots you're talking about, St. Brian, the before work, after work, it's a completely different role I've found, and it's obvious. I knew it before, but didn't have the opportunity to be around any other time. But coming back at that time, it is, I mean, essentially I'm a disciplinarian, and that's about it, because it's just about getting stuff done before they get into bed. And being just turned 7 and 4, it's still pretty crucial to keep that kind of thing going reasonably on track. So I just found that 40 minutes I had with them after I got home, I was the bad guy, essentially. Like that was my role. And then if I was around before school, then it's kind of the same thing, you know, finish that, get your shoes on, get your shoes on, get your shoes on, get your shoes on. You know, it's just that all day. So 5 days a week, that's me. And that was my experience of them. no time to do anything else. So the weekend was filled with the stuff I needed to do midweek. If there was any of that. And so everything got slotted around that. So the majority of my time with my kids has been poor in quality, in reflection.
Mm.
And so this has given me a chance to be there when that's not necessary. And that is completely different. And it's almost like I've literally seen them differently for the first time. Like I'm looking at them, I'm not telling them what to do. I'm hearing them as opposed to just getting them to do something, which I think is, at least with Ellie, it's quite different for me because I was at uni when Rowan was born. So it was kind of like this, in a way. But Ellie, I didn't get that. I was at work. So it was a much more traditional sort of situation. So that's been a big thing. That's been a big thing for me. Is that I've kind of seen her differently for the first time.
And Ellie's 4.
Ellie's 4, yeah. So it's, that's funny, isn't it? Like it just disappears. People say, it goes so fast, and it's like, well, yeah, I guess it doesn't really go fast, but it just disappears. It's the same. It's the same thing for so long now, and this has kind of changed it. Force changed it, which is good. So, I don't know. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's I like the way you put that, Dicey. Resonated with me with respect to more the disciplinarian, because in the morning it's up, right, we've got a time, I've got to be out the door, I'm dropping you to school, and just crack the whip to get this urgency about them, which is challenging with 4 and 7-year-olds, but teenagers is a different type of challenge as well.
Sure.
The world sort of slow motion to get out of bed and get moving. Challenging, directions from parents. What do we know? We've never been a teenager before. So,
I am laughing so hard, Brian. I am laughing so hard because
I was like that.
Sung,
I don't
no. Talk about who shit, Dad. What are you on about? It's like, and the world in slow motion. That's a perfect analogy. That's perfect.
I don't know what's happening.
I was there since I'll second it. I remember. I didn't have to deal with it, but I saw it for sure.
That's true. Yeah.
People always talk about how teenagers just grunt, and I'm sure I did after seeing you sing something. I'm sure I must have. No. Mumbling.
Oh man. It happens so slow. I forget about these things. I don't even remember you being there, Dusty. That's how slow it was. Oh my god.
There's plenty of mumbling under the breath as they walk off to their room. And that's like, what did you say? Like, well, they just I was nothing, and then so.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one. That's cool.
So yeah, and you're right. When I go home from work, it's dinner, and then it's right. Okay, brush teeth. Have you done this? Have you done that? Right, go to bed. It's late, and then the cycle starts again. So they've probably seen me in a different space as well in this period of time, where I've. But it's something it's not going to be easy, just because the way things usually are in the world before COVID. But probably a lot more conscious of that now. Had the time to reflect, because what time do we really have to reflect? I don't necessarily have that time, because there's so much else to think about.
Not this much reflection anyway.
No, not exactly. I count this as the time to really reflect, to find time. And this is what you talk about daily practice. If it's really easy to say I haven't got enough time and to push your daily practice aside, but in this period of time, apart from my practice, physical practice, I've had more time to practice just from a probably emotional, spiritual perspective, to take deep breaths and, to a degree, meditate without necessarily formally meditating, and without thinking, I can only do this for 15 minutes or I can only do this for 20 minutes. I know what my schedule is. I know where I've got to possibly pick up the kids or drop them off at school now, but the work demands aren't the same at the moment. So I don't have that strict timetable, and that's allowed me to, spend a little bit more time doing that, sort of internalise it, looking at things internal.
Mm. Mm. It's interesting, isn't it? So can I ask the three of you to join me in this conversation? Let's say we talk about the academy, and all four of us have spent a significant part of our lives in the academy. We know how it has been. How would you like to see it happen as we move back to the non-COVID season, as Sing Sung calls it? So we're coming out of COVID, assuming that we will always be aware of respecting social distancing when people are unwell, maintaining our support to the federal government health regulations and recommendations. As there are other nations now who are starting to get a second wave of COVID, and it's a different strand apparently. I don't kind of keep looking at it all day long, but I hear these things from Simo because she's because of her job, they get the latest bulletins, etc. So assuming all of that is okay, how could we do the academy differently, yet still giving all of us a quality experience when we're face to face?
That's the tough thing, Steve. When I saw the government announce, I saw comments that Sing Torren had sort of initially put on, and then others responded to. Looking at least this next stage up until June, from next week up until June, whatever it was, the 19th or 18th. I can appreciate the increase in people being able to gather in one space, and even in the next stage about the, still a use of, but minimal use of shared equipment. But my thinking was around, okay, what can we do? Because social distancing seems like it's going to be around for some time, the 1.5. So, our jongs, our pad work, our usages, it feels that if we did go back to the school from a Kung Fu perspective, it would be that at least we're physically in the same space, not virtually, but what we do would be similar to the virtual space, where there is no hands-on. There is just students executing their techniques, their combinations, their weaponry, and the instructor at distance giving them feedback. So, I don't know how that would, what's the pros and cons of that. It's good to be in the physical space with each other, but also I think we've all learned, well, I know I have, to be far more comfortable with the virtual space and their connection there. So yeah, I don't know. It's just frustrating that with the restrictions, it still doesn't allow, that I can see, I might be wrong, but even the next stage, it doesn't allow us to, even if you took out, pad work and usages and just did jongs, twice a jong coach or jong whatever, I don't know whether we would be, from a government's perspective, in a position to do that.
Mm. Mm. Well, yeah, I don't know. I got a bit of a confused message, so I thought I'd give it a few days and then get some clarification. But I thought it was 20 people can gather, but maintaining social distancing. And then when the Chief Medical Officer for WA spoke, I thought I heard him say that gyms and fitness centres can gather with minimal shared equipment. So I don't know what minimal is, because you either share stuff or you don't share stuff.
Yeah.
And it was much clearer for me when it was adhere to social distancing. Well, that means you can't touch each other, and I assumed that there was no shared equipment. But now it's minimal shared equipment. So for me, that's a bit fuzzy, because it's either you can or you can't. But the moment you say minimal, then there's opens up for interpretation, I think.
Yeah, I reckon it might be a bit simpler for us, because any equipment we share is within the 1.5 anyway. So, body pads, hand pads, I think if you look at it from that perspective, we're probably too close, even if we were sharing pads. So if you look at it that way, then it's out until they say contact sports, which I think is the level after this coming week. So if that's 4 weeks away, let's say 5 weeks, and then another week, let's say 6 weeks to be safe, and to be hopeful, then, I mean, I'm itching to get back to jong. So that's one of my favourite, if not the favourite part of training for me, is Bill Sao Jong, Gaucho Jong, all of them. So I think, but I think it's pretty clear that that's not going to happen until stage 3 comes in.
Yeah.
So that said, looking at drills, it does help being in the same room, and I think as soon as we can do that, we should. But there is this whole other place now, this virtual place that people can benefit and progress in their own time. In the same way that I've gotten used to working from this room, people have realised that they can train at home quite easily, and they can slot it in wherever they can. And if given the right access to materials, they can, in a sense, take more control over their own progress through the art, then that's a great thing. And then they come, in my opinion, my hope would be that they come to class with, more queries, more questions, more understanding, stuff to get clarified. And maybe that is a much better class for everybody, because I know when I'm standing in a room, I'm always listening. You guys are with everyone. I'm always listening to what everyone says and all the questions that come up, because it's all the same stuff. So everything that I'm doing is completely applicable to everything they're doing, regardless of belt level. So the kind of the time that people put in, if that's increased and everyone's putting in more time, then that can only be a good thing, I reckon. Even if it is 10 15 minutes between classes, that's more than that's more than I was doing before. So I don't know, it could be, I mean, that can only be tested once we're back in the room as well. So probably a longer process, but yeah, given the right materials, I think a combination of what we're doing now and face-to-face will be fine in the meantime. And then 6 weeks not so far away, I don't reckon. So then we come to class and that the application, pad work, jongs, maybe there's more room for that kind of thing, because people are practicing at home, and their drills are such that, it's 1 or 2 questions here, it's clarification here and there, and that heavy learning and repetition and time spent, so if people are doing 3 hours a week, and there's this much, there's, let's say 15% is learning the moves, and 3% is clarification on technique. If we switch that whole ratio around, then the progress people make will be enormous. So it my opinion, that would be a much better result than what we've been doing for the last, or at least me, what I've been doing for the last 20 years.
So what I'm hearing you say, Daising, is there's virtual learning has shown up that you can actually do the heavy lifting of the learning and the cognitive stuff at home. And because you're doing that, you're actually revisiting the learning more frequently. So more frequently than the 10 minutes in class, in an hour and a half class, the 10 minutes of concentrated, detailed progress, and then spending the other 70 minutes just repeating it over and over. If you're doing that at home and you're doing it more frequently than 10 minutes a week, then when you come to class, it's all the tweaking that happens rather than all of the repetitive practice, because you repetitive practice you've done at home.
Yeah.
And therefore the progress is going to be quicker.
Yeah, there's a depth that you can only get from that way around. You can't get the depth when the majority is put your left foot here, put your right foot here. The depth comes from time, and so more time is critical.
The interesting thing will be, we see the regular faces online in the classes, but we see a lot of people that we're missing. Either they're not comfortable, as some said early on in the piece, with the virtual environment. So you sort of hope that they are continuing their practice at home, but we'll see that when everyone gets back together. Those we've seen online, we've seen a number of them come a long way, where each week it appears to be with some of the students we've got less and less to say with some of the techniques of the combinations they're doing, because they're hearing the instruction obviously through online, but then they're going away and they're digesting that feedback and they're practicing and they're coming back better at it. So it'll be interesting to see what if any there's differences between at the belt levels. If there's a blue belt that's not online and there's one that's online, that had similar skill levels prior to a knowledge base, what that looks like when we do get back into training. But one of the things around in the meantime, so let's say next week or the week after, we and the town of what they call Leederville, the town of Vincent, you can go to the school, you can use the hall, and we had a Tuesday night where we have a decent turnout, where the 20 people are inclusive of students or instructors. Probably need to think about, particularly if it's a combined Tai Chi Kung Fu night, we can't have 21, so we don't really want to be turning people away at the door because of the numbers. So how that would look to make sure that we no one's sort of turned away unnecessarily on the night or the day.
Yeah, well, that's challenging as well, because our Tai Chi classes on Saturday, for example, on average, we're exceeding 20 already. So, yeah, they will be challenging. I think very quickly, if there isn't one already, there are going to be apps available, I guess, where people can book to reserve a spot. So, I mean, just thinking on the fly, I could use Eventbrite straight up and have 20 tickets available, free tickets for Eventbrite, and then students can log in and reserve a spot.
The other thing, Sifu, I don't know about the space. I don't know about the space, the amount of square meters there is in the hall, but it's usually, or what they say is the 1 per 4 square meter. So if you had some sort of separation midway through the school, through the hall, then you could have Tai Chi one side, Kung Fu the other, and be able to have in the entire space more than 20 people. But because they're in 2 separate rooms, they would meet the compliance side of numbers.
That's possible. I think that's, Daising, you mentioned the inside-outside thing. I mean, that'd probably be easier just to have an indoor class and an outdoor class as well. And we could have 15 in each, and that's only 30 people, like 15 in each class in 2 separate areas. That's not hard. This space here behind us, the studio, I just counted it 7 by 8. So that's 56 square meters. And I can comfortably do, like I have done the last 2 Mondays, a private session with 2 other students. So there's 3 of us on the mats. And with 3 of us going across, it's just enough space for us to maintain our social distancing. And that's not wheeling a weapon yet. So you don't even have a gun going off there. So we had student 1 on the 2nd mat in, 1 mat in, myself, excuse me, myself on the 4th mat in, and then the last student on the very last mat, blue mat back there. And that means that we're on 2 mats apart, which is the 2 meters. And it's only just doable. And we're going forward and back. And so I reckon in Leederville Town Hall, because, well, I just want to say, because we're not stationary, our 4 meters has to move with us, our 4 square meters has to do that. I see that naturally that we'd go across the width of the hall, and we would be able to fit 20 people in there across the width of the hall. You know, just, I reckon.
The other thing there as well comes down to skill of the instructor, I guess, is the way that you divvy that class up as well. So we wouldn't necessarily have to be all moving at once. Done things in the past where, you know, you get a particular drill out in front of everyone, which, you know, in other arts is not actually uncommon, although in our training it's pretty rare that you would have to do it in front of everybody unless it's your grading. So, you know, potentially it's those kind of things as well, where you get the green belts out, starts our gung, go through once, have a chat while they're doing it. Maybe we're talking to the blue belts in the line about how it applies to, you know, relative concepts for them, and black belts can have a look at it and go, this is where you're going, and you make it relevant for everybody whilst everyone's doing what they need to do with enough space. So I think all that stuff's really easy to get around, given maybe a couple of classes just to see how it goes. And yeah, short term, I think as well, you know, considering once contact sports come, well, presumably we're in the clear then.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think for me, it's definitely coming out of COVID with the restrictions is going to help form the new routine. And the first learning for me has been that you can learn Kung Fu from a book. Do you know how there's always been this colloquial saying, you can't learn Kung Fu from a book? And I think I started reflecting on this and sharing with everyone when we first went into lockdown. And that is, my old mantra was, you can't learn Kung Fu from a book, so you've got to come face to face. And I used to really have quite a lot of judgment about colleagues and competitors of mine who were selling online courses and selling manuals and books and that type of thing. But in actual fact, when we come down to it, when we go back through the ages, everything was learned out of a book. It was even learned out of drawings on cave walls. Like, there was a drawing and there was an interpretation of that drawing, and that's how you told the story, and that was the learning from the story. And then all of the traditional Chinese martial arts, at least, were written down in scrolls, and the scrolls were passed on from generation to generation. And the job of the person reading it was to interpret the scroll in the way that fit their experience when they learned it face to face for whatever period of time it was, and then pass on through their own experiences, the culmination of, this is what I interpreted from my teacher. This is what I've read in the book. And this is my experience after having practiced it for many years. So I'm bringing all these 3 together, and here's my interpretation, right? And that has been our job as instructors all this time. We learn something, we follow the principles, we practice it ourselves, and then we go, here I am going to impart my knowledge to you. So we all have been learning it from a book. And the first piece of humble pie I had to taste was when I was delivering the first Zoom class. It's like, oh shit, how am I going to do this? Like, is this actually possible? Because for decades I've been saying it's not possible. And in actual fact, it is. It's very possible. As a matter of fact, when I step away from making the Zoom class, or as a brand, Zoom as a brand, by the virtual class, a replacement for face-to-face, that's where my mistake was. It's not a replacement. You can't replace face-to-face with anything else but another face-to-face. Likewise, you can't replace a virtual class with a face-to-face class, because there are things about the virtual class that you get that you don't get face-to-face. Things I've heard other Jingmos say is the angles. So when we're looking down a camera and we say, look at what my hand's doing, you can only do that down a camera. You can't do that in class because it's 3D in the class situation when we're looking at each other, and you can't see so clearly that the hand is coming in one track. Likewise, you can't see so clearly the hand doesn't move when something else is moving. The other thing I've heard is that the amount of time spent one-on-one in a virtual class is far higher, far greater than in a face-to-face class. The amount of detail that we go to in a virtual class is far deeper than we can go, that we have the opportunity to go to in the way we've been holding, at least, our face-to-face group classes in the past. So it's been really interesting, and the last, I just wonder, you know, how having listened to the three of you talk, that these last 2 Mondays I've had Leif and Daniel here doing their private lessons that we booked before COVID happened, and we were just waiting for the time to come around for the hall that we had booked at Loftus Community Centre, and of course lockdown happened, so the centre got closed and we couldn't go in. And it was only last Monday and this Monday we've been running these classes, and they do the Zoom. They do the Zoom. You're right, seeing Brian. There's something missing, crackling there. Anyway, so they've been doing the Zoom classes in between the face-to-face, and I have half an hour with each of them over the hour. And I've been able to go into so much more detail with them this time round than I had done last year. So they had done the same 4 private lessons with me last year. And now we're on the second of the 4 private lessons in COVID. And because they're doing the virtual classes in between, which we didn't have last year, the detail that I've been going through with them is far greater, and because they're able to practice and they're able to engage with the learning online, repeat the classes in their own way, look at the on-demand content that is now available through our student portal, and practice, because they have the time to practice, whereas before they were working, you know, all of the usual stuff, leaving home at the crack of dawn and getting home late and all the rest of it. So it's been quite revealing for me, this new format. And I think you've got a valid point there, Dai, saying that if we were able to maintain the on-demand and virtual learning, because there's two pieces there. The first piece is the on-demand content, where it's just stuff you want to watch and get access to. And then there's the virtual class that you come and check in with and get some detail whilst it still maintains your practice. And then you come to a face-to-face to get the final step of the interaction with another human being. So you do the actual usage. Like, we haven't even done that yet. We haven't even got that close yet. But the face-to-face would be like the final stamp of approval, so to speak. The final double, triple check. yes, I'm on the right track. And then you go back home and you do your repetitive sequence. So the face-to-face is not the repetitive sequence. It's at home you do the repetitive sequence. So then the learning happens face-to-face and online, and the practice happens at home, which is a complete 180-degree flip. Because up until COVID, it all had to happen face-to-face.
Reminds me of a Chinese movie like Ip Man, where the students are really like into learning the Kung Fu, and they come to the Ip Man and learns these cool techniques, and they go away and practice. And there's that one student that a montage is happening around for all his skills to come up, and then he goes back and checks with the master and see how he's going, learning new techniques if he's able to, and then doing all that process. Reminds me of that, watching those Chinese movies, how the student is dedicated to the art and practices every spare chance he's got, and he goes back to the master to check in, and he goes practice, and then the typical thing is the master doesn't give him the next step until he's done this step correctly, sort of thing. But we don't do that as much.
Yeah, I mean, I think I quite like the on-demand things. So I'll watch, like I like doing a little bit of woodwork in the hours that I have available, and I will watch clips of a select few people that I follow that I find interesting, of them creating projects. They're not projects that I intend on doing. I watch to pick up tips on, just techniques of what they're doing that I could apply to something that I might want to do. And some of them are 30, 40 minutes long, by 5-6 episodes to produce like a tiny project, because it's quite time-consuming work. But I'll watch that. I won't do it, but I'll watch it. I don't have the space to do it. But that's time spent in my book. Like that's time spent on learning those techniques and things I can try when I get a chance. I can try it. So I don't think, I do think it's a great thing to have available for practitioners, because it means that at any point after the kids go down, at any time during the week, the kids go down, and I sit down for that first time after doing whatever it is that needs to be done, and you can just flick on a drill. That kind of stuff's really, that's invaluable, I reckon.
Yep. Yep, I agree.
I mean, I constantly, I don't think I'm alone here, particularly in this room, or this virtual room. I constantly think about Kung Fu. Like, it is in my mind all the time. It's in I squeeze the fist, and it's just there, and it's 30 seconds here, it's 2 minutes there. Like while I watch the leaves seeing Brian out the window, it's constantly, it's constantly there. And I think anytime you can, you can provide that for students, I think that's bonus. That's all good stuff, I reckon.
Yeah.
Well, we're on our way with our on-demand content. Sundays seem to be our preferred filming day. The studio is close to a main road, so even though we have the space 24/7, when, for example, here today, there's quite a lot of traffic outside, and that's not ideal for filming, but we'd do it if we had to. And two of you gents will be joining myself and Seng Sang doing the filming of the content and stuff like that. So I guess we can bring ourselves out here later this week or on the weekend, or we'll talk about that some more. But You're right. The on-demand stuff is there's definitely a place for it, and revisiting things even without physically doing them is all part of the learning as well. And I like that. I'm the same as you, Darcy. I'll watch a few YouTube guys who are video creators, and I watch them not because I want to physically reproduce an overhead shot for product review, because I don't do product review, but I'm learning as I'm going how to present something from a top down, because my top down would be, look at this is what I'm doing, and have a look at it from this angle, which is very different to always looking at it from that angle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do that too. And it's invaluable, you're right. It's constantly revisiting and learning as we go. For me, still, it still brings me back to the big question I have, and that is, how does the Academy look post-COVID? Like, how do we do this again? Clearly, we're not going to switch the virtual learning off and go straight back to face-to-face. I think that would be crazy to do that after the amount of learning that we've done about the benefits of the online presentation, whether it be live or on demand. Like Sing Sung, I too was extremely tired. I had no idea how tired I was until I got to stop. And then the third piece of the pie is that I actually like spending so much more time at home than I ever had done in my entire married life, parent life. The COVID had forced my hand on parenting differently, and I really like it. I actually really like being at home with my family for the majority of the time, rather than being away from my family the majority of the time. And I know, I mean, it's very cliched, but I know my kids will get big like him or him, whichever way it is on the screen, and leave home, live away. So the time right now, where Isabella last night, she says, so what's go? She puts her hands on her hips last night. She goes, so Dad. I said, what is it, darling? She goes, so what is the go here? I said, what do you mean, darling? She goes, why is it that it has taken us more than 3 months to read this book? You used to read to me every night before I go to bed, and now all you do is Yearloos. You just keep doing Yearloos every night. You're just doing Yearloos. So what is the story? And I said, that's a good point, darling. She goes, so I want you to read me a book now. Okay, darling. She said, which book? Well, the book that we started 3 months ago. Oh, okay. So it's like, all right, she's got a point. And so we just sat and read, and it was lovely. It was like, oh. And then for the first time in months, like it could even be a year, she volunteered to let me brush her hair. It's like, and that's the thing that I loved doing when she was little, was to brush and plait her hair every night. And it stopped. I don't know when it stopped, but it stopped ages ago. And last night was the first time she volunteered to let me brush her hair and plait it before bed. It's like, oh, wow, I was so grateful, because I've been missing out. Because William's got long hair, so I'm running, like literally chasing him, pinning him down to brush his hair, because he said, no, I don't like that one. He's just running around and going, I don't like that one. As soon as I hold the brush up, he goes, ah! He's just running away from me. So, last night was the first night, and I thought, wow, all right, I still got to do my Yearloos, still finished off my Yearloos as I planned, but my priorities changed, and she was right. She woke me up to the fact that now it's coming back. I thought it had gone forever, and it's like, wow, I really like this. This is a real important part of me being a dad. I really like doing this. So making the time for that actually is a priority, because it's, why else do we do what we do? We provide, well, we do what we do because we might be lucky enough to contribute to our world and our community with the talent and the skill that we've been given. People value it, so the timing is right. I'm lucky that I'm able to make a living out of what I love doing. But ultimately, we all want to provide for our families the security so that they're safe, so that they are clothed, they are fed, they are educated, that they have good experiences in life, and that they get to learn from their experiences and learn from our experiences, and they get the best platform to make their own decisions when they're when they're adults and they leave home. So isn't that why we work? We work to provide that for our family. And therefore, doesn't it not make sense that in doing that, it doesn't make sense to me that in doing that, I end up becoming the disciplinary and the stranger and the bad guy. That doesn't make sense to me, because it's the total opposite. And it would make sense to me that if I came from that position, I set myself up to be the bad guy every time our kids were awake, that I would be bitter and twisted about being a parent. Be like, this is all screwed up. I'm giving up everything to provide the best and get treated like shit because I'm always the bad guy. So, you know, that, for me, that's probably the biggest learning I've got from the COVID experience, that it's kind of aligned my doing with my being. I want to be the best dad. I want to be the best husband I possibly can. And therefore, how do I do that? Because the next part of it is I want to be the best Sifu as well. Because that's who I am doing, because that's what I believe to every cell of my body that I'm put on the face of the earth for. This is my role. So I want to do all of these things to the best of my ability, but not set myself up to be disappointed at the end, because you know, the environment from which we do it from is just not a match, doesn't fit. And I think I'm as much as yourself saying, Brian, when you first said that it's just at the effect of the environment, like things just happen, and then we end up getting so busy and we end up saying yes to so many different things that we actually don't have the time and space to do properly, that we're just doing it and stretching ourselves really thin.
Yep.
And really the big picture was, I just want to be the best husband and the best dad I possibly can. That's it. And then I take on this role at work, which is to provide for my family and do the best role as this guy as well, because I'm not going to just take money from people and do nothing. I'm going to do the best way I can, do the best job I can for the money I'm getting paid. And, you know, it's kind of, so for me, this dilemma, actually now I've come to this crossroads after hearing the news last night that yes, COVID is going to go away. Like, it's really clear that we are moving through this, and we're moving through it at a pace that is far quicker in transition than many other countries. So what am I going to do? How do I do this so that it honors everyone? And I'm not going to go back. I can't possibly go back and, you know, switch off all of the Zoom stuff and then just go back to face-to-face classes and just hit repeat. I mean, that would be crazy. I don't have any answers, mind you. I just,
I mean,
that's kind of what I'm.
Yeah, it's thinking about that, Sifu. If you were going to keep, so Martialetics obviously has the online content, but still maintain a virtual classes, but also the physical. It's probably trying to identify a way with the instructors available to maybe have that. So on a Thursday night, you know, at the moment, how we do it up into Black to Blue is sort of roughly 6 to 6:30 or 30-40 minute class, and then senior belts join for the class after. But again, the class is if you include sharing, it's about, it's between 30 to 40 minutes, because it's not like your typical class, because we don't have, the jongs and the usages. We're just going through technique in combination and sharing. So that, maybe there is the ability, to probably be difficult for an instructor to do it at the school, because there's not many quiet spaces outside of the echo of the hall to run a virtual class at the same time. But it might well be that, on a Thursday night between 6 and 7:30, there is the class for everyone that wants to physically go. There is an instructor or instructors there to go you through the learning. But also there is an instructor that is, whether they're operating from home or another environment, is connecting with the people that, for whatever reason, couldn't make it to class. Maybe they were fatigued, so they couldn't do a full hour and a half. Maybe they had some degree of an injury. It was too cold. But that you could have still those virtual classes operating. And if you log online and no one is virtually available, then the class doesn't go ahead. But if there's one person, that one person gets a real concentrated class for 20 minutes, half an hour. So I don't know whether that's a option.
Yeah, that's definitely an option. It's definitely an option. We're also thinking about changing the days that Simo mentioned, because Sing Sung and I both said that we were so fatigued last, right up until the lockdown happened, that perhaps we did morning classes on Monday and Wednesday, and then the afternoon and evening classes were Tuesday, Thursday. And then we had the one collaborative class on Saturdays, as we normally do, rather than have Tuesday, Thursday as a whole day from 5 o'clock in the morning through to evening. We split it up. So, changing days is an easy thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
I guess there's more questions than answers, because we're all in this together, and it's all new for us. None of us have experienced this before, where the entire world is in the same position. And of course, workplaces and all sorts of, all everything's been affected. There isn't anything that hasn't been affected. So they're the thoughts, things that I'm running with at the moment. And we've got this week, to try to work out what next week will look like. And I'm expecting a couple of emails, at least two, one from our national peak body, Kung Fu Wushu Australia, and the other from the town of Cambridge, where we hire the Leederville Town Hall, and see what they have to say. Because, we could go out in the park, but as Seng Sung has said before, we're approaching winter now, and last week we wouldn't have been able to go to a park at all, day or night. So, on a good day, we could head to a park. I don't know about the mornings. It's pretty brisk. It was 6 degrees this morning. At 6 o'clock, it was 6 degrees outside, which, some people wouldn't mind. If you dressed correctly, it wouldn't matter. But, so, the outdoor spaces right now, we're heading into that time where it's not a good idea. And of course, flu season's coming. I think we've all had our flu shots. Have you guys had your flu shots?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Yeah. Well, flu season's coming, and we're probably expecting that there'll be a few new COVID cases because it's flu season too, and stuff like that. So we're all going to be a little bit, hyper vigilant around being exposed to the cold, because you can't go around post COVID-19 coughing and spluttering because you've been out in the chill. That's not a good look. Yeah. So there's a few things to think about.
That's probably a good thing, Sifu, particularly for the winter period with the virtual classes, is there, we would be, saying to people, if you've got any cold and flu symptoms, a sniff, a cough, don't come to class. But then they don't miss out. They've got the ability to sort of go online and still do something.
True. Yeah, true.
Because some people, feel like they're, if I don't, they force themselves, even though it's not the right thing to do by others, but force themselves because if they think, well, if I don't get to class, then I miss out another week of training or how many days. So by giving them the other added option, whether it's virtual and or the Marshallytics options, at least they feel comfortable that, no, well, I'm not going to miss out. I'm still going to be able to get some instruction and some learnings, just not physically.
Very true. So we've spoken a lot about COVID and stuff like that. I know that you gents were looking at photos as well. Last week you were mentioning it. You had photos from different China tours we've been on and stuff. Have you got anything to share today? Daicing, you were going through the albums before?
Yeah, I got a couple. I'm probably not as prepared as I could have been, I guess. But we did mention last time that we performed with the monks on their special stage in their facility there. So there's a couple of shots here of the group photo we took after that performance. So this one at the top here, how close can I get before this goes fuzzy?
Yeah.
That's all of us with the monks interspersed. So that's on the stage. There's a replica of the front of the Shaolin Temple. So it's like a set piece behind us. We're on the stage, and then in a shape around all other three sides of the stage there is stadium seating for people to view. And we did a bit of a shirt swap as well. I think it might have been seeing Matt's idea, seeing Matt Sparpen as a cultural exchange. We'll do the jersey swap. So that's us with after swapping. Seeing Matt down the front there, me on the side with my back turned, doing the dentist, Rob the dentist. And where is it? Yeah, that's the proof at the top there with shirtless people in the lineup. There's a ton of others. They're talking about training equipment. They had their posts up there, so that's us all posing on top of the posts that they rock around on at the top. And behind us there is like a little, well, it's not that little, but it's a courtyard, I guess, with a whole bunch of really traditional training equipment there. The big concrete bowls that I guess move around, and you pivot around the outside rim of the bowl, and maybe you can see it in that photo as well. There's a wall behind us as well. It snakes up and down that you can run over and test your agility. And there might be I know I've got a photo of actually me and Paul Newman on that one, but it might be in a different album.
Yeah, I've got a photo I'll share online afterwards with sort of doing Doc Jong, so with Segi on that bowl. Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe one more. That's the actual front of the Shaolin Temple. Was that fuzzy? That's us out the front there.
Yeah.
Gacho Jong with the monks.
Yeah.
CJ doing the partner shot.
Oh yeah.
There you go. A few there.
That's very cool. Can you scan some of those, Daicing? And
yeah. I can get a few of them in.
Cool.
I'll keep having a look. If you've got a couple of them, Brian, then I'll see if I can see any.
Yeah, but I'll email them. I'll email them through later, and then see if we can upload them.
Sifu.
There you go, Sifu.
Looks so young, doesn't it?
Very cool.
Yeah. Maybe need a little sleep there, Sifu.
Yeah.
Is that lime colour?
What was that? What was that saying, Brian?
Is that a lime-coloured umbrella you've got?
Yes, it was a lime-coloured umbrella. It was whatever we could get at the time because it was raining there.
It was raining, yeah.
Yeah, like 5 UN for an umbrella, like $1. So, and they're still making a profit.
Wow.
For those who are listening, you can watch the full podcast so that you can see the photos popping up on the screen on the For Real YouTube channel.
Oh, that was on the train.
That was on the train. Look at that.
Wow.
Deep in thought. A couple others
Deep
there.
in thought.
CJ Clare.
CJ Clare, yes.
In the background. We'd been doing a fair bit of travelling by then, I think. We had been on planes
Yeah.
and all sorts of stuff. That's an
Yeah.
overnight train, that one.
It's a bit tiring.
That was the one to Beijing, wasn't it? Overnight train to Beijing.
It was the 8-hour train ride.
Yeah.
Overnighter. The one that we all thought we'd go to sleep in, that you're so excited about being on a train overnight in China that you don't sleep.
No. And everyone's doing silly things, and yeah, sleeping's the last thing you're going to do.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't know if you can see that. That's kind of the position I was in, knees up.
Yeah.
head jammed against one end, knees up and feet.
Oh yeah, that train would be small.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't clear. Yeah.
The toilet was literally just a hole cut into the ground, fell onto the.
You can see the tracks. Yeah, just there.
Traditional.
Wow.
Sorry, the formal ceremony the day after the presentation, or maybe the afternoon. I can't quite remember. It was either.
Cool.
That was at the entrance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a whole lot of photos of Buddhas, jade Buddhas, stone Buddhas, every metal Buddhas, every Buddha you could imagine, we took a photo in front of.
Oh, the terracotta warriors.
Terracotta warriors.
Yeah.
2,000-year-old Buddhas.
That's right. Yeah. So.
Do you know that there's do you guys remember, Dicing, you guys did a 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese?
Oh my God.
I remember that. That's at the risk of putting myself in the deep end. That's still up on YouTube actually. So I can't quite remember why, but and you get there's a couple of photos on top of the Great Wall, and you kind of get a bit bored of doing kung fu all the time. So there's a bit of a hear no evil, see no evil up there. It takes so long to get up there, so you don't want to go straight away. So you just sit there for a while and fill the time.
That's right.
Myself and Paul Newman actually ran up it, which Paul was a smoker and he kind of struggled a fair bit, but
Yeah.
We got up there quite early, so there was a whole bunch of. We got to take photos of everyone coming up, like as they arrived. So there's a few photos.
Yeah, that's cool.
Of people coming up as they first came up to that spot. Do you still have that shirt, CP?
Which one?
Number
I
one,
don't, but
CP?
yeah, that's right. Yeah. I had it up until probably a few years ago.
Oh yeah. Not in rotation.
No.
Yeah. It's a great trip.
Yeah, it is definitely. Well, it'll be a while before any of us start traveling overseas.
Yeah.
China might not be the first on the list for some.
China probably won't be first on the list.
There's a few photos of Jill in here, actually.
Yeah. China or Italy, I would have thought, or the UK.
That's us at KFC on the last night. Went out.
On your robes.
Yeah, just left the hotel in the robes.
Shanghai, wasn't it?
Yeah, it must have been. Yeah.
I had KFC in, I think it was Beijing or maybe Guangzhou somewhere, but it was an interesting take on chicken. I don't.
Not quite certain.
Interesting flavour. It was deep fried something.
Oh, right. Lovely.
Yeah, I remember wanting to do it again. A few years later, we were trying to work out how I'd get back, and Sing Dan went one year, and then we said, because we were the two instructors there while you went with the team. We were doing classes. And then so we made a deal, and Sengdan went 1 year, and then I was going to go the year after. And then as the next one came around, he went and just bought his ticket, and he didn't tell me, and he just came in one day and went, "Oh, I've already bought my ticket."
Oh, yeah, that's the time. Yeah, he went 2 in a row. That's right.
Yeah, he went 2 years in a row, and he knew I'd be upset, so he didn't tell me, and he just did it anyway. Yeah.
Friends.
Yeah. And then there was that year Matt went again, I think, with the demo team, that everyone got violently ill.
2016. Yeah, I was there.
This is what I did. I got asked by people to have photos with them.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine it was because I was, a head taller than him, but pretty strange, right? That was at Forbidden City. I don't think his kid was too happy with it, but he seemed pretty happy.
He's got to hang up on his wall. I met some American actor.
Yeah. Yeah. That was probably it. Yeah.
Cool guy on TV.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
I'll scan a couple and then have a look for some others. But there you go.
Cool. Thanks, guys. All right. Well, let's wrap up the podcast. Is there any final words you guys want to say about?
Maybe just encouraging people to ask some questions again.
Yeah,
get
true.
Get on the forums and just ask
Definitely.
whatever's at the front of your mind.
Yeah. Or if you guys are listening and you're not part of the Jingmo community and you want to send a question in, we've got an email address, fureel@jingmo.com.au, FUREEL@GINGMO.com.au. So we'll be happy to answer those questions, but I'll post it on the group chat as well, so we get some questions for the next podcast, and maybe the next one we're actually in person with people instead of virtually.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah. All right, thanks guys. Thank you today.
Okay. Thanks, CFO. That's it.
Thank you.
Booyah!